Hey, it's Professor Grabowski again. In my previous video, I discussed the different ways that laws related to the internet and technology are made in the United States, and they include the Constitution, through bills passed by legislatures, through executive actions by the president, through rules and regulations promulgated by government agencies, and through court rulings. But it's not an easy process. Making internet laws in the United States faces many challenges, which I will explore in this short lecture. One major problem with trying to regulate the internet is that the law invariably lags behind technology. Most communication now occurs in environments that were not envisioned when our laws were created for issues such as privacy, defamation, obscenity, and other areas. Some of our laws are in desperate need of updating to keep pace with the digital age. For instance, America's privacy laws haven't been substantially updated since 1986. Back then, there was no World Wide Web, nobody carried a cell phone, and the only social networking that then 2-year-old Mark Zuckerberg was doing was on playdates. Another area in which the government has been slow to adopt new laws is cell phone use while driving. Only about half of all states have laws banning all cell phone use while driving. There are all kinds of loopholes, such as the laws only applying to people of certain ages. Another obstacle for updating our laws is political polarization. It's difficult for our federally elected lawmakers to pass new laws because we live in such politically polarized times. Every 2 years, every member of the House of Representatives is up for re-election, along with sizable numbers of senators, and control of Congress frequently changes hands from one party to the other. Even if the Republicans or Democrats manage to gain control of both chambers of Congress, they often lack the supermajority necessary to override a presidential veto of their bills. And control of the presidency, likewise, often flip-flops back and forth every 4 to 8 years between Republicans and Democrats. So as a result of this constant change, it's difficult for the United States to develop a consistent, coherent, sustainable approach to internet regulations. And forget about amending the Constitution, because that's an even more difficult process that the United States currently lacks the unity to achieve. Beyond this partisan bickering, many lawmakers lack the technological expertise necessary to craft laws related to the internet. In particular, justices of the United States Supreme Court have come under fire for lacking familiarity with new technology and for not appreciating how normal people like to use things like the internet. To be clear, Supreme Court justices are some of the brightest legal minds in the world. But they have also admitted to being resistant to using technology in their own lives and have been ridiculed as woefully out of touch with the basic workings of technology. For example, during an oral argument in a case applying intellectual property law online, Chief Justice John Roberts said he doubted that anyone, other than drug dealers, carries more than one cell phone. Roberts also reportedly drafts his opinions with a pen and paper instead of using a keyboard. Meanwhile, Justice Elena Kagan admitted she and her fellow Supreme Court justices aren't very tech-savvy, and they still communicate with each other using paper memos instead of email and text messages. While some defenders of the court's old-fashioned practices might argue that it provides more security since it reduces the chances of a cyber hack, remember that in 2022, someone leaked a copy of the transcript of the Supreme Court's controversial ruling on abortion. So that makes the security claim a bit dubious. That said, the Supreme Court has recently had a lot of turnover, and some of the long-serving dinosaurs on the court, who proudly identified as Luddites, have been replaced by younger and more tech-savvy justices, including justices who have young children. So I do think the current High Court has a better understanding of issues involving the internet and a better appreciation of how younger people like to use it. That said, the Supreme Court has historically been reluctant to make significant rulings on these types of issues, and it remains to be seen whether they will tackle them in coming years. As bad as the Supreme Court justices' tech knowledge is, the average citizen's civics knowledge may be even worse. Polls and studies show that Americans don't seem to know much about how their government functions. Consider these findings. 61% of Americans were unable to name all three branches of government, and 22% could not name any. 70% of Americans didn't know the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. When it came to the First Amendment, 37% could not name any rights, and only 1% could name all 5 rights. Meanwhile, 12% of Americans thought that the Constitution included the right to own a pet. Now, this stuff might seem kind of funny, but this ignorance has serious consequences. Our democracy depends on having an informed citizenry. Having such a widespread lack of knowledge in the government can lead to an unscrutinized government, abusing its power and violating the rights of its citizens. The good news is, if you're paying attention to my lectures and reading my textbook, you will be informed and know what your rights are, so you can stand up for them. Well, this has been Professor Grabowski, and thanks for paying attention.